Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Scale with Joy Summit. Here I am with Brian Moran. He's the CEO of the Small Business Edge, and he has had extensive experience with business. He is a contributor to major publications. He's helped thousands and thousands of small business owners. And I'm really lucky to call him a personal friend through my husband. So my husband, John, he said, you've got to meet Brian. I worked with Brian in a previous role, and we hit it off. So welcome, Brian. Thank you so much for being here.
Laura, I'm thrilled to be here, and thanks for having me.
Yeah. So if you wouldn't mind, I know it's tough to sum up your extensive career in such a small amount of time we have here, but would you mind just kind of guiding the viewers through your journey to the state?
Yeah, sure. So
yeah.
So I started out in publishing almost 30 years ago. First started I was 8.
Yeah.
I was 8. Yeah. In fact, I was 10. But I started out at Success Magazine, and it's funny. I went to journalism school in hopes of being a sports writer, and I eventually got into magazines and found out how much they make on the editorial side. So I switched over to sales and went and climbed my way up the ladder on the sales and business side. So spent time at Success, Entrepreneur, Magazine, Inc. magazine, Wall Street Journal. And I also had my own publishing company for a number of years, and we published magazines for business owners. So I really got a feel for what it was like for people to pursue their dreams. And I learned so much from so many smart people. And in 2012, I left the Wall Street Journal and I started my own company. And we basically do two things. We help people run better businesses, and we help marketers better target the small to mid-sized business market. Yeah.
So you had your publishing company. And
Yeah.
then we talked about if this was okay to talk about before the interview. And you said, yeah, absolutely. It's so awesome when people are willing to share. You had your publishing company, and then the recession came.
Oh, yeah. The big tsunami.
Yes, the tsunami. So for those of you who are listening, that was, and might not remember, not to age Brian and I or anything, that was 2000. When did you really start seeing, I would say 8, really when you started seeing the signs that maybe publishing was going to take a hit?
So interestingly enough, I started my publishing company in 2002, and we had the SBA's magazine that we published for them, and it was fantastic. It was like printing money between that and then launching my own magazines and doing contract publishing. And I almost sold my company twice in 2005 and 2006, and of course, I kick myself now for not having done that. But anytime you know when a recession's coming and you're in the publishing business, because about 6 to 12 months before the actual recession hits, advertising starts to drop off.
When the consumer confidence index starts dropping?
Well, advertising in magazines, back in the day, yeah, and all of a sudden, and it drops fast, and so. And that's basically what happened. And I saw the signs, and I just, it's one of those things where you say, okay, I can either shut everything down except for the magazine that's making me money, which is what my business coach advised me to do. Very, very smart guy. And of course, I didn't listen to him. And I said, you know what, I'm going to ride this out. And that's what I said. I'm going to ride it out.
Ride out the hurricane.
Right. And I just got steamrolled. And lost almost everything. I mean, I had to declare bankruptcy in 2010, January 2010, which was just devastating because it was about 2.5 years where all of a sudden I went from having a lot of money to having little or no money, and very, very humbling experience. And so I shut everything down, and I went to work for the Wall Street Journal. I had a great job with them. And I said to my wife, I'm here for 2 years, and then I'm going back out on my own. And let me tell you something. It was, for those who remember, it was a very sluggish recovery.
Yes. Can we stop for a second here?
Okay. Yeah.
So many people are listening. There may be many people here who have filed for bankruptcy. There may be people who have had other types of setbacks that really struggle with putting themselves back out there. In that moment, when you said to your wife, I'm here for 2 years and then I'm going to put myself back out there, what were some of the thoughts inside your head? Like, what story did you need to rewrite in your head to help you feel like, I'm going to go back out there?
So, it's interesting. I know who I am. I know, what my DNA is made up of. But I had a friend of mine, an incredibly successful business owner, who I met while at the Wall Street Journal. And I had breakfast with him one day in New York. And funny thing is, it was on my wife's birthday. She was coming in. We're going to go out for dinner and a show. And he said to me, he said, Brian, are you happy? And I said, yeah, of course I'm happy. I work at the Journal and I get to all these trips and meet interesting people. And he said, you don't seem happy.
Ooh, that's a good friend.
Yeah. I said, what are you talking about? He said, you know what? Some people were meant to be in corporate America and corporate leaders. And he said, other people were meant to be entrepreneurs. He said, you were born to be an entrepreneur.
Wow.
And he said, I work in corporate. Yeah. And he said, I worked in corporate America and I told my wife I needed to go out and start my own business. And I said, if it fails, I can always go back to corporate America. And I said, so what happened? He said, well, it kind of started to fail, but I didn't tell my wife. And then it rebounded. I did, and he did incredibly well. It's unbelievable how successful he became. And I said, look, I'm in. I'm on board. I said, you need to convince my wife. And and so my wife came in and he came back and he had a drink with us that night. And he said, listen, Brian really should start his own company. And, his business failed, but he didn't fail. Like he got knocked down, but he didn't get knocked out.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so he said, get back up, dust yourself off. But here's what he said that really was the kick, the seller. He said, do it for your kids. Do it so, so that they see what it's like to go through failure and hardship and difficult times. And they were difficult times. Really,
you had kids. Yes.
My kids were, at the time,
little.
They were like 10 to 16 years old. I have 4 kids, 10 to 16. All of a sudden I'm staring at college. I'm staring at, a private high school and stuff like that. And really like making some hard, difficult choices. And I said to my kids, when I tell you there was nobody who thought, leaving corporate America to go start your own company in 2012 was a good idea.
Yeah.
It was me. And, and I remember my oldest son said to me, we're taking a walk one day, and he said, you know what, Dad, I believe in you. And I think that, you will be successful no matter what. But I didn't just start the company. Like I didn't just start.
Right.
I didn't leave and start it. I had planned this for months. So I literally left the Journal in end of June 2012. I had 7 clients when I opened my door on July 4th. I had a whole business plan, GPS plan, clients. In fact, I had 3 checks arrive that week.
You had to hedge your bets.
No doubt.
Had already, probably still credits recovering. Like you weren't at the luxury of taking similar, the same risk that you were able to take previously. So in a way, that's probably a good thing.
Definitely. You know what? It was an education. That first real failure is so hard to take.
It is.
Humbling. And it's like getting hit in the back of the head with a 2x4. It knocks you for a loop.
Especially when it was going so well, right?
Right.
You had every reason to sign personal guarantees on loans and all that, right? Because you were like, it's a good bet at this point.
Right. Right. And then all of a sudden things go sideways. And man, you talk about feeling alone in the world. You don't answer your phone. You don't want to go out. You just want to stay in bed all day in a fetal position. And but you can't do that. You got to get up. You got to have faith in yourself, believe in a higher purpose, because reason alone would never allow me to step outside something that was going well. to risk it for something that was going to be better.
And that you really ultimately felt like it was your purpose.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, so there's a book that I read when I was 17 years old. It's called Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah.
And by Viktor Frankl. And it talks about what is the meaning of your life. And if you apply that to everything that we go through on a daily basis, everything that we do is a means to a single end. And that is the meaning of my life. My career, my, entrepreneurial endeavors, they're a means to an end. That's not the end. The end is not to build a company and sell it off one day. Okay, then what? Where does that take you? What drives you? What is the meaning of your life? And for everybody, it's different. But you have to ask yourself that question.
I read a book once called Finishing Big, and it talked about the, you probably are familiar with it. I think it's where it talks about the severe depression that many people go into when they build a company and sell it.
Yeah, because they think that was it.
That was it, right? And it was going to make them happy, and it didn't, because that can't make you happy.
No, money alone is not going to make you happy. I know so many people who are incredibly wealthy, and they say, you know what? Money solves one problem.
Yes.
But it brings with it a host of others.
Right.
And it's hard to say that to people who don't have money,
right,
or who live paycheck to paycheck.
Yes.
And that's where you have to find gratitude in other things.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're grateful for every single day, whether you're ascending the mountain or descending into the valley, say, you know what, there's a rough patch coming ahead, but I'm thankful for having my mental and physical faculties in place to get past it and come out on the other side, and I'll be better for it. Then you say, okay, let's do this. Yeah.
So you're doing this. You got your first few checks that first week.
Yes. And so, amazingly, everything was going well. And then my first big corporate client, imagine this. So we take this client on, and we're billing them a pretty good, 5-figure monthly clip for work that we're doing. And they were supposed to pay us a deposit, and then monthly check, monthly check, monthly check. And now they're 4 months into monthly checks, but they haven't paid us yet.
Yeah.
And it's an international bank. And it was around Christmas time. And I had to say to my wife, okay, I got some tough news here. My largest client has not paid me yet. And they're 4 months into it, about to go 5. And, she shook her head. She said, this is what I was afraid of. Like, we're back to where we started. And so on December 30th, 2012, I remember taking a walk with my dogs. And I prayed that day. And I said, God, I am going to figure this out. And by the way, the person who told me to go into business for myself, who said it was a good idea, he said, what are you worried about? And I said, hitting those financial speed bumps, cash flow, whatnot, and not having the resources to get by them. And he said to me, if you hit those speed bumps, I will give you a line of credit at 0% interest. And he mentioned a figure, and it was a lot of money. And I said, okay, that sounds great. I'll do it. Well, I called him on December 28th that year, whatever. Okay. And I said, I hit a speed bump. He said, what happened? I said, my largest client hasn't paid me for the work that we've done in the past 4 months, plus a deposit. It's about a small 6-figure check that they owe me. And he said, I would love to help you, but I'm not in a position to do it right now. And I was stunned. And I said, what are you talking about? Like, you said you would help me. He said, I know what I said, but I just can't do it right now. And this is a guy, when I tell you, he has enough money that he could have written that check 100 times over. And I yelled at him, and I said, This is
You're
not
my
what you
lifeline.
Yeah. This is not what you said, da, 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 da. And I hung up the phone. And that's when I took the walk. And I said, I'm going to call the CEO of this bank on Monday in the new year. And I'm going to get that money come hell or high water. And on Monday, and I said, 2013 is going to be my best year ever. I said, I'm making this promise to myself. And that's hard to do when you're staring at this situation. And
I love that thought, though. I want to pause for a second and acknowledge how you decided to choose a different thought.
Yes, because it's so easy. New Year's coming, New Year's resolutions. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to get my finances order. It's going to be my best year ever. And those usually last about a week, maybe. And I said, it's going to be my best year ever, and I'm committing myself to that one thought. And so that first day of the new year came, first day of business, and I called the bank, and I said, I need to speak with the CEO of the company, and I've got this financial matter. Well, they put me in touch with the accounts payable, and a woman in accounts payable was mortified about the situation.
Wow.
And I said, I was told not to contact you, that I only had to speak with the group, the marketing group. And she said, well, they were wrong, and we're going to have a conversation with them, and I apologize for this. She sent me a check for not only the 4 months that they owed me and the deposit, she paid me 2 months in advance. And she overnighted the check. And I got it the next day.
Were you looking at it like?
Yes. Yes.
Holding me up to the light, like?
Yes. And you know what? It's the power of positive thinking. I was not going to take no for an answer.
Yeah.
I said, I've been down this road before, and this is not how the story ends. This is where you say enough.
Yeah.
And I got it, and I laughed, and I said, okay, we're off to a good start. And you know what? There were a lot of great moments that year. And it was just that power of positive thinking, saying, you know what? I'm going to come up to this obstacle. And if I run towards it, the mountain becomes a molehill.
Yeah.
If I run away, the molehill becomes a mountain. And that year and for a couple of years after, I never stopped running at the molehills. I said, because that's all they are.
Yeah.
And it really does work.
It does. It does. I love that. I love that you're choosing a different thought and not becoming a victim to your circumstances. And I think that's really easy to do, whether it's, just something that compared to what you went through is seemingly small. Maybe I had a launch that didn't go as well as I needed it to, or something pretty major, that impacted you and your family of 4 right around Christmas time, when it was probably pretty high pressure, and choosing that new thought. So another thing that you and I have talked about in the past, unless there was something else you wanted to add to that.
No, this is good.
There was another thing you and I have talked about in the past, is this idea of growing your business without worrying about the get. Right?
Without worrying about the gap.
About the get. Like what you're going to get back. Growing it without giving, being generous, showing up, without being super obsessed with like how it's going to come back to you.
Right. Well, and that partly is faith. Right? Yes. Faith in mankind, and faith in the people you do business with, and faith in the universe, right? That all things equal out. There's a phenomenal book called The Greatest Salesman in the World. Don't let the title fool you. It was written probably almost 70 years ago by a man named Og Mandino. And he talks about the tombstone test, and it's for salespeople, but it's, what do you want written on your tombstone? And if you say, oh, I won the most contests, or I sold the most widgets, then you're all wrong for sales. But if you say, I helped other people achieve their goals and their objectives, and in turn, I was able to achieve my own goals and objectives, then you're perfect for selling and really entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And so I always ask my clients Tell me about what your goals are and what your objectives are and how I can use my resources to help you achieve your goals.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people do that. I think a lot of people build something and they go out and they try and sell it, whether it's a product or a service, and they say, okay, I found this great service. Now let me go find somebody who, would want to buy it, rather than saying, how can I help you today? And knowing that you're sincere and you're authentic and genuine about it. And people say, wow, that's refreshing.
Yes.
How can I help you too? Like, what can I do for you? Well, you can be a sponsor, you can be a client. And so that thought of kind of leading with your hand out to say, how can I help you? Without understanding necessarily what you're going to get in return for it, there's always something that comes back to you.
Always.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting for people who haven't discovered that yet in their path of entrepreneurship. Usually they're plateauing revenue wise.
Mm-hmm.
And the trick is, like the paradox is, right, to continue giving without worrying about what you're getting. By creating value in the world, trusting that value is going to show up, what you give out, that value is going to show up in your bank account, and it may not be in the way you were expecting.
Right.
To be okay with receiving it.
Right. Now, that said, don't give away everything.
Yeah.
Right? Now, there are people, because there are givers and there are takers in this world. And you have to identify people who are simply takers, who see your generosity and want to maximize it without giving anything in return. And those are people who are pretty easy to spot. And, it's just simple that you just stop doing business with them. You stop talking to them. And so it's okay to say no to those people because they don't understand the beauty of closing the loop on everything, being that there's rewards in giving. They're just simply taking all the time.
This is a good question. I'm curious about how you handle, because I'm naturally a giver, and that has certainly, and I've overgiven to people who are just 100% takers. And sometimes takers are attracted to givers because they will, they're like, great, like this works out perfectly for me. So
right.
Where's that line where you're like constantly generous with people? Like you've been super generous with me in my own career transitions. Like where are you generous with people? And then where are you kind of like, okay, these are my boundaries and we're done here.
Right. Well, you know what? It's just, I've been always a pretty like a natural reader of people. Mm-hmm. And just in a first 5 minutes, you can tell what somebody is, whether they're a giver or taker. I understood your situation, and all I did was give you my time and advice and introduce you to some people.
Yeah.
Because I knew that's all you needed, and that's all you were going to ask of me.
Yeah.
And that's fine. And I love John, so that was easy to do. Most people I'll get, like, people will call me or people will email me all the time. And I'll answer those emails. I'll answer them and I'll say, how can I help you? Hey, Brian, I just read a blog post you wrote, really in dire straits and whatever. And I'll answer it. And to me, this is going to sound funny, but that's God reaching out to me.
Yeah.
And that's him saying, help this person in need. I'm not telling you to give up everything you're doing and help that person, because all they need to see is that somebody cares.
Yeah.
Somebody's willing to listen. Somebody's willing to offer advice. And really, how much time did that take away from what I'm doing? 10 minutes, right. maybe 30 if it involved a phone call. And then I go back to what I'm doing. So, that's who I am and that's who you are as people.
Yeah.
We help. If somebody's falling down, we're going to help them up.
Yeah. And it's not, I think that is directly proportional to the idea that we have both scaled businesses, multiple 6 and 7 figure businesses.
Yes.
And we both, struggled in certain times. We've both flourished in certain times. And I think that does give you that sense of like compassion, when somebody's really struggling. But you also know who's going to dig out of it because of the way that they're thinking about it.
Right. So, I'm not going to, I'm going to teach you how to fish. I'm not going to just give you enough fish to last for 2 weeks and then say, okay, good luck. If somebody's really struggling, I will sit there with them and I'll identify the problem. I'll give them 2 or 3 options that I think are the best solutions. And I'll say, good luck.
Yeah.
It's not, I'm not saying good riddance. I'm saying that you're going to need to go through this on your own. And here's the deal. It's not going to kill you.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's painful. And let me get back to the story about my friend, by the way, which I didn't close the loop on that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
When he said, I don't have the money to give to you right now, like this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. He was teaching me a lesson. He had the money.
Oh, okay.
He had the money. He could have said, Brian, here's X, here's a couple $100,000. Pay me back when you get paid by your client. But that would have taken the emphasis off of me trying to get that money. I would not have made that call Monday morning because the fire on my rear end that was burning out of control is now temporarily out. And so I don't have to address the pain right now. So he said to me, I'm not in a position to give you that money. And when I hung up the phone, I said, I got to figure this out myself. And guess what? I did.
You did.
A couple of weeks later, I called him back and I said, I owe you an apology.
Oh, that was big of you.
Yeah. No, I said, I now see what you were doing when we had that conversation. And I understand that if you had given me that money, I would not have made that phone call. It wasn't a money situation. It was a communication problem.
Yeah.
They didn't understand that they owed me this money for whatever reason, and they fixed it.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to take that a couple of steps back. When you get into a car accident, you need to take a couple of steps back to see what happened and how you're going to repair the situation.
Yeah. That was such a good story. And that must have been kind of hard for your friend too, because I'm sure he would have just preferred to write you the check. He believed in you. He was the one that encouraged you to do this, and he made a commitment, but he probably knew you weren't really stuck, right? Like you probably knew this is a matter. And I've had to do the same thing for big corporate clients. It's like, you're not getting paid. You like email the CEO and you're just like, I got to get paid,
Right.
That's what I do for a living, and I've got to get paid. And it's funny how large that can happen, even in large companies. It's not comfortable, especially if you like the person, you have a good relationship with them, or even if you don't. But it's a conversation that needs to happen.
And think about how much you learned and grew from that.
Yeah.
And if somebody
had right now, where I'm like, all right, it's not a ton of money, but like it's been a while now. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They're hard conversations to have, but now that you've had them, you understand how it works and how you can do it easily without worrying too much about it.
Right. Not being liked. Like the CEO is a woman that I'm really friendly with, and I'm like afraid of not being liked and like all that stuff. But I'm like, I really worry more about the 5-figure check than not being liked. So you kind of have to like get over that, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you have to believe in yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the big play this game. This is what your listeners a game that they should play on a regular basis. It's called the WhatIf game.
Cool. Okay.
What if this happens? How will we respond? What if our clients start paying us late?
Yeah.
What will we do? What if we lose our largest client? What if an emergency expense appears, like we have to invest in new equipment or one of our business partners falls ill or disabled.
Yep.
Look at every aspect of your business and play the what if game, because eventually one of those things will happen. And instead of trying to determine how are we going to respond, and ultimately what happens is you make a bad decision based on little or no information, and you look at it and you say, oh, why did I do that? But then you've already written out the answer. It's like break open the glass, pull out the sheet of paper, read it, and execute.
Yeah. And you've written the answer when you weren't under the stress.
Right.
So you're operating from the most intelligent part of your brain. You're operating from your frontal cortex. You're not operating from your primal brain. When you make decisions in advance, about how things are going to go. It's how I always like talk about time management. When you decide in advance how your week's going to go, you're operating it from the most intelligent part of your brain.
You see this book here?
Yeah.
This is my What If book.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm not going to ask you.
I have in here my what if scenarios.
That's great.
And what if this happens? What if that happens? How would I respond? And not only do I write them out myself, I share them with my advisors. I get their input.
Oh, that's great, because then you can just implement.
Right. That's literally it.
It's the fan.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's in case of emergency. And what that does for you too, one, it helps you avoid making bad decisions.
Right.
And two, it keeps your downtime limited to a minimum.
Right. So smart. I love that. It's such great advice. So you're filled with great advice. And I know you're also surrounded by people who are filled with great advice. So tell us a little bit about the project you're working on right now.
So Small Business Edge is a global community platform for business owners. And it has about 4 foundations, 4 cornerstones to its foundation. And think of it as like a market network. So it's Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook meets Airbnb and Uber and eBay. So there's an opportunity to build your network, meet like-minded people, collaborate with them, share best practices, ask questions, and then we'll have a marketplace section where you can buy and sell products and services to other business owner members. And we'll have sponsors. We have sponsors. There's a Q&A section. So whatever is keeping you up at night, we have right now 75 subject matter experts who can help answer your questions. So whether it's cash flow or technology or investing, we think about this. Think about business being like a road trip, and you come to these forks in the road, right? Do I go left? Do I go right? And a fork in the road is like opening a new location, hiring a new employee, investing, getting outside investment for your company.
Yeah.
Do I go left?
Yeah.
Yes. Do I go left or do I go right? And a lot of times business owners make these decisions in a vacuum.
Yes.
Think about the ramifications of their decisions. You can ask us and we'll help you. And so we have a Q&A section. We have original content by some really smart people. We're going to have live Q&A sessions, webcasts, podcasts, tweet chats, marketplace, which I mentioned, and we'll have communities. So for like-minded business owners, we'll have one for women, for veterans, for startups, for Gen Z. It's exciting.
Exciting.
Yes.
I love the diversity. So, when you were saying a lot of times they operate in a vacuum, a lot of times the echo chamber is their own industry, right? So, like I came from the photography industry and everybody is just running the same marketing programs. They're running the same sales programs. Like they're just regurgitating what one another is saying. And it got to a certain point where I was like, I got to get some outside perspective here because we're all running the same marketing programs and it's just like it's templated, but it doesn't necessarily resonate with maybe my market or my direction or my sense of purpose. So I love that you have such a diversity. I think some people think they can't learn from other industries and categories. And I'm always a big fan of like my best strategies have come from another industry. Like if I'm working in beauty, my best strategy came from a fitness, idea or something like that. Like it's because no one else is doing it. That's why it's awesome.
That's how you think outside the box.
Yes.
A lot of time innovation comes from the strangest places.
Totally.
So,
yeah. And if they want to have access, so you're doing a complimentary trial, is that right?
Yeah. So anybody listening to this, let's give them a code. Joy.
It's
How about joy?
Okay, join. And it's underneath if you guys like missed it or, you're like, You walked out of the room for a second. We'll put it underneath this video.
Yeah, you put in the promo code JOY, and I'll give you 3 months for free.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Right, so if this sounds like a great community that you would want to be part of, you can go check it out. There's no risk other than you might get sucked in. And thank you, Brian, for joining me.
Sure.
It is so great to see you in person. It's usually over the phone. And and make sure to say hi to him and just participate in the community and let him know how you felt about this interview when you join for your free trial. So thanks again, Brian, and we'll see you all next time on the Scale with Joy Summit.
Thanks, Laura.